Welcome back to II Captain. I'm your co-host, Marc DeSantis, and in this episode, we'll talk about important AI topics such as identifying and valuing AI solutions, build versus buy options, and AI use cases we've found within our own business. It's an informative conversation that I think will help you along your own AI journey. This is II Captain. Let's get into it.
WWT presents II Captain.
So when we talk about understanding and identifying value, whether it's a build solution or a buy solution, do you have a certain approach that you take to maybe deduce which direction we might head?
I'd say we typically start further up the stack with the stakeholder of what's the business problem, and then where do we have theories or hypotheses around how would we best be able to solve that. That way we don't jump to somebody showed a demo of something and suddenly we're solving a problem that didn't exist. And I think that becomes, I think the discipline at the company level is often whenever we're showing something technical, a demo or whatnot, the executives are still asking the question, so what is the business problem that was solved? What is the intrinsic value of that particular solution? So I think that that's a healthy tension of we don't get lost in the weeds necessarily of just chasing after cool or, the neat product that somebody demoed. So then I think that goes next to the next level that you were saying is if we start to study what the problem is, what the expected outcome is, and then how would we go about doing it, then you start to get into, is it differentiating for WWT or is it, a commodity?
Right.
And then, at that juncture, you could say, well, if it's a commodity, then let's start to assess the overall, vendors in the space,
right.
And can we make the best decision based on cost, capability, et cetera? Again, avoiding that just because somebody saw the demo on a website. If it's on the differentiating side, then it becomes more of a heavier iterative involvement, right, of creating the MVP and then starting to grow that into the full product. Oftentimes, we probably get a combination of both. It's, hey, there's a part of this that would interface with CRM or maybe with Oracle, but there's a differentiating component, and we need to also build a custom capability.
Yeah.
So it's never fully clear cut, but in the end, the question always becomes, what do we start to see as the outcome? Is it scale? Is it revenue generation? So I think that creates the healthy tension.
Yeah, and I always think about can we build this efficiently and cost effectively and better than a third party could, right? And so I think back to some of the early days around, thinking we were going to build our own, Copilot solution. And there were some experiments along those lines that maybe proved out decently. But I think at the end of the day, asking the developers that were using the custom solution, how do they compare that against whether it's GitHub Copilot or Codium? Right. I think everybody agreed that, it was going to be the other two that they would choose to use on a daily basis, right? So if we were going to build our own solution there, for the long term, we would need to spin up a specialized team, right, who is maintaining that solution, forever, basically.
Yep.
Because it is not something that you just kind of, build and put out there and then hope for the best, right? And so that's where, even though it's, a $20 per user per month fee, for GitHub Copilot right now, I think it makes sense because it's something that people rely on every day, talking about, contracts that we have in place with customers and the pricing agreements that are in place. Again, a lot, right? So I don't minimize any of the work that our internal sales teams are doing in order to get those quotes out the door. That is not something that we're ready to start, jumping into today.
Yeah, I agree. Plus, there's, I think, a lot of unwritten rules. Even as best we try to establish those and build them into the system. There's the stuff that they've learned that the folks that are doing quoting know about. Oh, the system works that way, or you never do this with that, and it's not all captured. So I think generally we would find Gen AI solutions are better in a place where something is pretty well mature and encapsulated, as opposed to trying to hit a broad, multifaceted process.
And I'd also say they're best when they are a co-pilot, right? When they're augmenting the capabilities of a person, right? Because right now, even with some of the advancements that we've seen in recent months, we're still not at a point where we can trust an AI to, provide a quote back to a user and have all the numbers correct and the percentages and the markups. So we need people to review that and, make sure that the AI is serving, the best intentions of, the company.
Maybe a rabbit hole to go down or not, but it would be just, I always think too about when you introduce new technology, there's a lot of the excitement and the things that we're talking about, but then there's also wanting to project forward 5 or 10 years. So I think too, like, the phone as an example, right? There was a lot of excitement, early adoption, and now there's a lot of discussion around, how soon is too soon to give a phone to a child, more for the access to social media and the effects, et cetera, there. So bringing that back into this context, a quote, or I remember when you were doing a demo of GitHub Copilot as an experienced developer, you were talking about how it helps you.
Yeah.
But then I'm thinking about a new in-career developer.
Yeah.
And if they're given the same tools and yet they don't have the experience, does that essentially handicap them in the sense that 5 to 10 years they won't have the same level of knowledge or experience that you do, that you're getting the kind of assistant value out of the capability versus I'm using it to do my job and I need it.
Yeah.
So it's a differentiator that I think about in this context, how when we're building the capabilities, does generative AI help us to be faster, but does it potentially hurt us in the long term? Us not just as a company, but us as an overall society.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
No, that's a good thought. And I think if we take the programming example too far, like we end up with Skynet.
Yeah.
But maybe even like, backing up from there, like when I think about the way that I learned programming, so I started to become interested in it in college. And I went to NYU. This was, late 90s, early 2000s. Java was probably the hottest language around at that point, but they didn't teach us Java. They actually went a layer down, and we started with Pascal and assembly.
Okay.
Right. So that way we were understanding how, the abstractions that Java was providing could be built. Right. So when you jump into Java, you already have these classes and components built out for you, right? Like what is a stack, for example, and linked lists and all these things that, just kind of come for free and people take for granted today. They were trying to get us to a point where we could build those, right? And understand like the bits that make up a linked list. And so, I think it's the same kind of question that you're getting at there is like, when do you start to need help versus like, how do you learn?
How do you progress?
Yeah. And I think it's the same. So talking more broadly about society, I think it's a similar question there because, one of my fears when it comes to AI is that we were talking earlier about, using AI to generate images or music, right? Those are uniquely human expressions, right? Yeah. Or they should be. Now we're using them, and we're using them here, and in a lot of cases they're adding value for sure. So using AI to generate images is one of the, pieces of work that I can point to that says, we're actually getting good value out of that because we don't have to pay for a third-party image library. We're getting images that are relevant or more relevant to the content that we're providing on our website quicker.
Yeah.
But when you think about, students and people that are learning kind of what their path is in life, people that, want to go down a path of videography or photography or musician, I don't want to take that away from anybody.
Right.
Like we can't rely on AI becoming, the innovation center for, human creativity. I think that's a scary
and then
thought.
Drawing it back to the work component of it too. I think the key that we will continue to have to figure out through user experience elements or whatnot is the reinforcement that it's an assistant. Because I think there's been a tendency that once you get to use it and you get 2 or 3 answers that that match what your expectations are, you start to ease off a little bit on the, I'm going to double check it. So back to quote as an example, if we get to the point, or when we get to the point that we can use that to help orchestrate something, we'll have to make sure that there's still that checkpoint that says, you still need to look at this, because it's helped you to do it faster and hopefully more accurately, but it still requires your layers of that. So we'll have to figure out, maybe there's also simulations more on the people side that people have to go through to get up to that level, so that they can practice identifying where those things are. So
yeah, because I mean, there are a lot of examples of embarrassing AI out there, right? And unfortunately, I think Google has been maybe facing the brunt of that, you know, with some of the images that people have been generating, and you know, there's examples recently of it telling people they should eat, you know, glue. 2 to 3 rocks a day, or eating or putting glue on pizza. So we don't want to be in that kind of a mode when we're providing a quote or a SAL out to a customer, or like, you know, we're using AI right now to generate RFPs, or, you know, respond to RFPs. There needs to be that inspection, right? Like, we need to have people that are trained to, you know, not only understand the limits of an AI, but also to, you know, identify, you know, the good parts of what's coming out of the AI, and also the bad parts. And hopefully on our end, we're doing a good job of, you know, providing the mechanism for feedback and using that feedback to, you know, improve the AI. Yeah. And I think it starts with, you know, the executive team understanding that it is an assistant approach. You know, that, yes, like we've always looked, you know, at automation as being an enabler of, you know, reducing, you know, the amount of expense that goes along with running a business. And AI, I think, you know, will start to bleed into automation in a lot of ways. But, you know, at least where we are today, AI is something that is best utilized as an assistant, you know, something that can augment what a person's doing. And I really appreciate, you know, as we've been having these conversations with our events team. So we have an events team within marketing. And as we're kind of taking a new approach with this custom built event planner tool, you know, our team is pretty small. Like, the events team is pretty small within marketing. And so talking with, you know, the manager of that team, what she's come back to us with is like, look, there's a lot of non-value add stuff that our team is doing, and I would love to automate that away, right? And so it's not a conversation around like, how do we reduce the number of people, but it's like, how do we get the people on that team to be spending their time where it's adding the most value, right? And so when we think about our executive briefings, like, there's a lot of value that's added, you know, with, you know, positioning and communicating those events well. But then there's a lot of, you know, behind the scenes stuff that happens with, like, you know, scheduling, and, you know, even the agenda thing that I mentioned, like, you know, little bits that, like, if we use AI well, you know, it provides a lot of assistance that, you know, gets them out of the nitty gritty details of, you know, building an event and being able to do some of the things like requesting assistance with an event, or requesting executive, you know, appearances at the event. Like, all that stuff hopefully will become easier and less of a burden on the team.
I think it can also serve not just as an assistant and having to reinforce that. It could become the means to a different end. So we talked earlier about the order status experiment. And there's kind of 2 parts to it. On the whole, it's basically doing what the application is doing. So it's not adding a whole lot of value. It was more of, can we get it to, you know, call the APIs? But when we started to talk to the sales operations team, they said, well, a decent number of tickets we get are requests from a customer about what our order status is. So if we, instead of making it a chatbot, maybe you can have a button on the order line, so that when I get the ticket saying, hey, what's the order status, I can go look it up and click a button that retrieves that, puts it into an email that I double check, and then I send out. So it's not replacing, so it's still assistant, but it's minimizing the time. It increases the turnaround time, so I get a better customer experience. And by the way, we can also advertise at the bottom of that email, hey, that you can go to wwt.com and log into your account and see an order status page. So you can just check this yourself. You don't even have to wait.
Yeah.
So at that point, you're kind of using Gen AI to put it out of business, so to speak, of getting them to a better overall customer experience. Yeah. And then maybe interacting with a more value add generative component at the wwt.com level of doing, delving into the research that we have, or doing, some tabletop, lab types of things.
Yeah. And there's ways of interacting with AI that aren't even, chatbot focused, right? So one of the things that we're doing with events, and I think could be beneficial for order status, is, basically doing it with email. Right. So if a customer is sending us an email asking us for an update on an order, we have a lot of orders that, are well understood. Like, we have very clear, ETAs associated with those orders that we can respond back with the AI with.
Right.
But then, there's kind of the second tier of support that goes on where, we have a delay, or maybe, there's a substitution that's required, and it requires that conversation with the customer.
Right.
And that's where, we can have the AI, classify the, support case that comes in and understand, like, is this something that requires human support, or is it something that maybe I can respond back with my first, bit of information about the order, and then for additional information, follow up with a human.
And yeah, even further to that, I think the tendency would be, if you're doing AI, you want AI for everything. Mm-hmm. But in your example, I think it's a good one in the sense that if you had the AI assistant receiving the email and saying, oh, they're asking about order status, I know where I can go to get that. Mm-hmm. And it orchestrates, but at that point it's calling the API, getting the data, and even the email itself is not AI generated at that point. It is the template of, this is how we always want these to be.
Yeah.
No glue on the pizza, that kind of thing.
For sure, yeah.
But it's still providing value in the right place. And I think that's one of the things that we often get into, is everybody, because of the excitement around it, it's like, well, I want the whole thing to be, it's like, no, use the right tool in the right place, intersperse the right capabilities.
Yeah.
And in the end, you're getting the better outcome. You're getting a higher consistency and accuracy on the information you're providing to the customer. The only part where it may make a mistake, so to speak, is, should I have given that email, or should I have escalated it to somebody to have a conversation?
Yeah, and we're doing something similar right now, using AI to identify spam requests that come through our website, right? So there were a lot of spam requests we were getting, and just, overwhelming the tier 1 support team. So again, we're classifying it as spam using AI. There's still the ability to go in and kind of review it, and make sure that those spam requests are accurate. So we're not completely trusting, the AI there, but it is allowing the team that handles the support requests, to spend more time providing more relevant responses to, the users. All right, that was a great conversation about the integration and impact of AI and automation in business processes. As AI permeates so many aspects of our day-to-day, it'll be increasingly important for you to understand the business problem you're trying to solve for, and really understanding the difference between a commodity solution and a differentiating solution. At least for now, there will always be the need for human oversight. And as we heard today, AI is best seen as a complement to human capability and not a replacement. If you like this episode, please subscribe, rate, and review us on your favorite podcast platform. See you next time.